Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Josh and a few others sent me a story, and I think I did a video about this guy a long time ago. But there's a guy who's been put on trial a whole bunch of times, 6 times, for murder. And the charges have finally been dropped against the guy, but his case has been up and down the legal system so many times it'll blow your mind. But the man's name is Curtis Flowers. And this version I'm getting from the New York Times, but it's widely reported. Nicholas Burrows and Rick Rojas wrote it. Curtis Flowers had faced the possibility of a 7th trial in a quadruple murder case from Mississippi. So sadly, 4 people were murdered in Mississippi a while back. And one man has been tried 6 times for those murders. So the prosecutor theoretically could have tried him a 7th time. Prosecutors dropped the murder charges against Curtis Flowers. Now, Flowers had been accused in the 1996 killings of 4 people in a furniture store in Winona, Mississippi. The 6 previous trials over more than 2 decades ended in mistrials or convictions that were later reversed. So they weren't all convictions. There were also some mistrials in there. But part of the problem in some of the earlier trials was that the prosecutor is white, Curtis Flowers is black, and it came out quite evidently on appeal that the white prosecutor would do everything he could to keep black people off the jury, convinced that a white jury would convict the man, but a black jury wouldn't. In the most recent trial, Flowers was convicted and sentenced to death, but his lawyers appealed the conviction to the U.S. Supreme Court, which ruled last year that the prosecutor had unconstitutionally kept black people from serving on the jury. Over Mr. Flowers' 6 trials, he had 72 jurors, okay? It's 12 times 6. Of those 72 jurors in 6 trials, 61 of them were white. Mr. Flowers said in a statement today, "I'm finally free from the injustice that left me locked in a box for 23 years. Now, here's the thing I'm going to get at, and I try very, very hard not to get political on my channel. I'm not going to today either. And I also do try to avoid discussing things that are too racially charged, because it's also difficult to do that without stepping into a minefield. But the Supreme Court's majority opinion in overturning the case was written by Justice Brett Kavanaugh. And he wrote that equal justice under law requires a criminal trial free of racial discrimination in the jury selection process by pursuing a relentless, determined effort to rid the jury of black individuals. The state wanted to try Mr. Flowers ideally before an all-white jury. And Justice Kavanaugh wrote that, okay? So Mr. Evans had recused himself from the case in January. Mr. Evans would be the prosecutor. And the Mississippi Attorney General took over the case. A spokesperson for the Attorney General confirmed that the charges have been dismissed, and said that no further comment would be made. Now, here's the problem. You might say, but Steve, this is a great outcome. Mr. Flowers was then released from jail, where he's been for the last 23 years. The question becomes, after spending 23 years in jail, will the prosecution gain much by trying to try him a 7th time after all these years? And so there are people out there going to say, but Steve, those delays helped him because it makes it harder and harder to try the case. Yeah, it does. On the other hand, he sat in jail the whole time. He sat in jail. The case drew more attention after it was featured on the podcast In the Dark, which cast doubt on some of the prosecutor's claims. I don't know much about that. I've not heard that podcast. During the 6 trials, prosecutors claimed that Mr. Flowers was a disgruntled former employee of the furniture store and that he'd been angry because he'd been fired. He was arrested several months after the slayings, and I will admit I do not know many of the facts of the case beyond what I just told you, but I am going to tell you that I do have faith that our Supreme Court, with its current makeup regarding conservatives and liberals and the people in the middle, if there are any, when they found that as a matter of law, what had happened was inappropriate with respect to jury selection, I'll live with that. So I can't imagine that it was just simply like, it's a gut feeling we have, a knee-jerk reaction. No, that's not how the Supreme Court operates. So if anybody actually is interested, you can go online And you can not only find the opinion written by the Supreme Court, which will include all of the facts of the case as they found them to be, and also references you can look up, but you can even find the briefs written by the parties themselves, and then also by amicus, which is just other people who thought they had an interest in the case filing briefs as well. So if you wanted to, you can go in and research this case and figure out everything that happened in all 6 trials and look at all the evidence and make a decision for yourself. You can do that. You can do that. I'm not going to do that right now. I haven't got that kind of time. And I don't think most of my viewers do either. But let's just say that the case, he was tried 6 times. 6 times. A couple mistrials, bunch of convictions. But when it went up to the U.S. Supreme Court, a majority of them, led by Justice Brett M. Kavanaugh, came to the conclusion that there was overwhelming evidence that the prosecutor was trying to load the jury, trying to stack the jury in a racial way, and that's inappropriate. And I know people are going to say, well, Steve, how bad could it have been? All you got to do is ask yourself, if you got arrested in a jurisdiction that is not like your skin color, whatever your skin color might be, okay? So let's suppose I'm a white guy and I find myself in a black neighborhood and I got arrested. How would I feel if I got charged with a crime and I saw the jury and they kicked every white person off the jury? How would that make me feel? How fair would that trial feel to me if there's going to be a jury of 12 black people trying my case and I saw the prosecutor kick all the whites off? I think I'd notice that. I think I'd be bothered by that. I think so. It hasn't happened, but it could happen to me. So before you simply look at this case and go, hey, guy gets arrested, they kick a bunch of white people, who cares? For once, just stop. Ask yourself, what if that was me as the defendant? Okay? What if that was me as a defendant? Look at your skin, see what color you are. Then ask yourself, if they kicked all the people with your skin tone off the jury and loaded it with 12 people with a different skin tone, how would that make you feel? Now, if you say, Steve, looking into my inner soul, it wouldn't bother me. Someone's bound to do that. In fact, I want to see that quote. The first person who says, Steve, I've looked into my inner soul, that would not bother me. I will pin that. The first person who says that. And if you think that's true, I congratulate you because you're a better man than I am. I would look at that jury and go, oh, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. But I wouldn't be laughing. It was a serious crime. And that's the problem. You know, there was a Naked Gun episode. I forgot which one it was, where Leslie Nielsen is charged with something. He goes into court and I believe it's the prosecutor stands up. But it's another attorney, stands up, and she's got a baby in her arms, and she's patting the baby, like she's going to make her arguments while holding her baby. And he looks over, and the jury is all women with babies. And he looks up at the bench, and the bench is a woman holding a baby. It may have been a dream sequence, but the point is that concept is something we should be able to understand. In our Constitution, it's recognized that peers is supposed to be people like you. You have the right to be tried by people like you. Now, that doesn't mean if you're a left-handed aerodynamicist that you have the right to find 12 other left-handed aerodynamicists to try you. But generally speaking, it's people from your community or people from that community, but people from that community that aren't terribly unlike you. But there's no question that a jury of your peers might be hard to define. But when I start obviously kicking people off the jury who are your peers, that's when it gets to be a problem if it's based on skin tone. And that's something that our courts have recognized for many, many years. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to rant about race or politics or religion, which hasn't come up yet. And again, look into your soul and see what you would do. But after 6 murder trials and 24 years in jail, charges have been dropped against Curtis Flowers. Questions or comments, put them below. Otherwise, I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Drive it like you stole it, Steve.